Welcome back to the Ultraviolet Tide. We are so honored that you're joining us for another week of the podcast. Today's episode is one that I've really been looking forward to for weeks now, because we are sitting down with Marianne Banister to discuss adolescent melanoma and the Claire Marie Foundation. Marianne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an important topic. And of course, I'm so glad we can do some good work together.
I completely agree. Snigdha and I were saying we want to use this podcast as an opportunity to spread the message as far and wide as possible. Okay. And today's episode is just another addition to that. So I want to give a brief introduction and background before we really dive into today's episode. So Marianne Banister is an award-winning journalist, media expert, and the co-founder and CEO of the Claire Marie Foundation. Marianne and Rocky Wagonhurst, together with their oldest daughter, Hillary, created this foundation after losing their 17-year-old daughter and sister, Claire, to adolescent melanoma. The Claire Marie Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to fighting against adolescent and young adult melanoma through awareness, education, and prevention. Every action they take is designed to help save lives, whether it be through their free skin screenings or their one-of-a-kind Collegiate Ambassador program that we'll dive into a little bit later. Kind of at the end of the day, the Claire Marie Foundation really strives for prevention by connecting adolescents, young adults, parents, and the general public with the medical community, and kind of in turn allowing that action and prevention tactics to reduce the number of adolescent and young adults diagnosed with melanoma. It is quite a mission. And Marianne, I know that doesn't even begin to encompass everything that you do. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of additional background.
Well, as far as like with the foundation itself, because I still do my media work as well, as far as consulting and advising and messaging. And I've been able to bring 30 years in TV and how to raise awareness and educate people and spread information and share stories to our foundation, which has really helped us to get Claire's story out there. And it is all about Claire. It starts with her. She's the heart of what we do, but it isn't only her. And that's one thing that we found out the hard way. When she was 14, we found a mole that had started to change on her ankle. She'd always had it, was never a problem before. Being a journalist, I did health reporting at one point when I was in Los Angeles, and hyper aware of risk factors for everything. And we had no history of melanoma in our family, but she was fair skinned, was very precautious. So we always did skin screenings for both girls, wore sunscreen all the time. She never went tanning, never took any of those risks. And so at 14, this mole started to look just different, but and she'd only been screened just 6 months earlier, and it was fine.
Okay.
But it didn't look like those A, B, C, D, E's that we're so conditioned to look for. It wasn't dark. The borders weren't changing. It didn't look creepy in any way. It just had like this dusty kind of gray look to it. And our pediatrician saw it as well. And it was right on her ankle bone where that skin is so thin. You can't just go to a dermatologist and have it punched biopsied. So we had to have a plastic surgeon. And finding a plastic surgeon that will take kids is a big challenge.
Right.
So we were put on hold, and we were told kids don't get it. You're a helicopter mom. It's a spitz nevi. It's rubbing up against her cleat. She was playing lacrosse all summer. We'll get her in when we can. Sure, it's nothing. We'll get her in. And it kept changing. And they still said, oh, I'm sure it's nothing. And they took it off and told us, oh, we're sure it's nothing. And then we didn't hear anything back for over a month. And it turned out the pathologists at Hopkins were having to look at it over and over and over because it was melanoma, but it didn't look like adult melanoma. And because of her age, well, let's try another test. What else could it be? This went on and on. So by the time we tried to get it off in June, we finally found out in October that she had a stage 3 melanoma. And the whole point was, if it would have been taken off right away, we'd probably still be here. And as we went through the journey, we found lack of understanding in the medical community
Mm-hmm.
that young people get it.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of the volume of how it is in circumference, and just the dynamics of the whole thing. And so I thought, as a journalist, I share information.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm overeducated and I'm blindsided and our well-educated doctors are blindsided, there's a bigger problem out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Claire, while she was going through this, we kept thinking, we were told, and we were really under the understanding, and she kept beating it on all odds, that she'd overcome it, that it would be something she'd just have to, like, every 3 months get checked for. And if something reared its head, we'd take off a mole before it became a problem. And that would just be the course of her life. Unfortunately, we lost her at 17. And when that happened, you know, we knew she would have wanted to share the information. She was private with it, extremely private while she was going through it, which was her prerogative. But afterwards, we felt it was our mission and her mission, really. And we do this in her name, is to share information. And what we found was really interesting, if anyone who's a student of statistics knows this, that it's all in the numbers. It's how you read them. And so most cancers are in adults. There aren't as many cancers in young people. Most melanomas, if you just look at from birth to 100, the majority of cases are Anglo men over 50 who golf a lot or spend a lot of time in the sun. But because cancer is not so common in young people, if you take it within the scope of cancers in young people, it's the number 2 cancer in adolescents, the number 1 cancer in young adults, and the number 1 cause of cancer death in young women, 25 to 30. Those are statistics from the Skin Cancer Foundation. I just don't make those up. And additionally, diagnosis is up 253% in this age group in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And in Claire's case, what we really found connected to this was that, just backing up a bit, at 13, her doctor very preventively started checking young people for hypothyroid disease, which is when you have too much of the hormone TSH in your system. And it can happen as a result of puberty. It's just one of those things. Very treatable, not a big deal. Very common. So he routinely would check. At 13, a year before her mole started to change, she was targeted as she was on that path. She wasn't symptomatic, but we would check her every 3 months and the TSH level would start creeping up. Well, after her diagnosis, at the same time the mole started to change, they ran her blood check, and a TSH on healthy person should be a 0.06. Hers was an 82 at the same exam as the mole looked different.
Wow.
So we're splintered with, like, okay, got to get this mole off, but everybody's telling us it's not a big deal. But wait, maybe we have to hospitalize her. What is going on with this TSH situation?
Right.
Secondary tests showed numbers correlated right there. So we're trying to figure all that out. So fast forward past her diagnosis, I did research, dug in. Nobody could tell me what was going on, how this would happen in a child that never tanned, never had a severe sunburn, was screened annually. How can this be happening? I found a study based in MD Anderson in 2008, and we have this link to the research on our website, that found if you have a mole that has a receptor to TSH hormone, meaning it kind of takes it in. If you have that type of a mole, which has a receptor to TSH, and you have an elevated level of TSH, it can basically feed off of that to create melanoma.
Wow.
So that's where she became the true definition of adolescent melanoma, because the TSH component was prompted by puberty, and by luck of the draw, if you want to call it that, perfect storm, I care to think of it. It became the two meshed together. And so every 3 months, we would just routinely check her body to see if any moles had changed. And it just correlated at the same time with every 3 months, we would check her TSH levels. Every time her TSH levels went up, there would be another mole that was changing that needed to be taken off because it became atypical and it was changing. And so her body was clearly responding to the TSH. And so that's one thing I tell parents, it's nothing more than a blood test. And our pediatrician ran the blood test routinely because he found a great number of patients coming in at 13, 14 years old. You think they have mono, or you think, we live on the East Coast, they have Lyme disease, or there's something else going on. And it turns out that they're hypothyroid. And with simple medication, you just treat it. It's just how it is, and it's not a big deal. But that's one preventive measure I say, because let's say if your child does have hypothyroid, if you as an adult am hypothyroid, it does not mean you're going to get melanoma. But what it means is maybe you should screen more carefully for it, because you too, without knowledge, could have a mole that could have a receptor to it. And so it's the same thing. What we try to educate young people to understand is that none of us really knows what's going on with our body. You can't do a genetic test to find if you're going to get melanoma. There's some tests that indicate cancer susceptibility, but not definitively melanoma. And if you have somebody in the family that has a history of it, that elevates your risk. What's real interesting is with young people, older adults will get a basal cell or squamous cell skin cancer, which is nothing to laugh at, and you certainly don't ignore it, but it's not deadly as melanoma is, because it tends to stay on the surface of the skin and it's highly treatable. Melanoma is the one that goes into the body and spreads through the lymph nodes. It's the deadly form. And this is what's interesting. Young people under 30 don't get squamous cell or basal cell. They only get melanoma.
Go straight to melanoma. Wow.
And so the question is, why? You're doing studies about testosterone surges in young men. They're looking at women, the chance of melanoma goes down post-menopause. Estrogen factor is not there. So they're starting to, for years and years and years, we have all been so conditioned, and it would make Claire crazy. Every May, Melanoma Awareness Month, put on sunscreen. That's the answer.
I know.
Don't go tanning. One time in a tanning booth, increase your risk 75%. So that's just like, write that one off right there, right? But all anybody would talk about is wear sunscreen, and you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Nothing's further from the truth. So what we do through our awareness and our education programs is we start with young people. We educate the parents, the grandparents. We work, we have a Sun Safe sports program in partnership with USA Lacrosse. We go to sports tournaments and other events because athletes are at special risks. If you don't believe, or Advil, my girls competed in lacrosse. My older daughter did the D1 path in college. She take Advil practically every day because of some pain issue, right? Yeah. That makes your skin more sun sensitive. Let's talk about that. So we factor all this knowledge and say, this doesn't mean you stay home. This doesn't mean you wrap yourself in bubble wrap. It doesn't mean you go to the beach. It doesn't mean any of that. It means you educate yourself to know your individual risk. And then just be smart. And of course, UPF 50 clothing is, I am of the mind, why do athletic programs not make uniforms out of UPF 50? How common sense is that, right?
I know.
Wear sunscreen. Don't do spray sunscreen because it just sits on the surface of your skin or benefits the grass as it blows off on it. How to use liquid sunscreen the right way. UPF 50. We talk about Helia Care, which all of our dermatologists recommend, which is this herbal supplement can actually help the body repel UV damage internally. It doesn't replace sunscreen, but it's just an added component. Don't go tanning. We talk about just ways to be forward thinking about it. Right. Of course, the biggest thing is to get screened at least once a year. And keep an eye out for any changes. Now, we have screened, we're hoping to hit 1,400 young people, and it's been in the Maryland area through free skin screenings. But so far, we're just short of that 1,400 number. But we consistently are hitting 16% of those that come through our program. It's recommended that they get a biopsy for suspicion. And we just had a screening this past weekend. We had a small number, but 30% of the people that came through were recommended to go see a dermatologist and take it
Wow.
step forward. And I want to clarify, that does not mean all those people had melanoma.
Right.
And this is where people are very resistant to the idea of screening and not fully understanding. If you have a mole that is said to be atypical or precancerous, mostly atypical is the more common term, that means something's not quite right with it. And where as an older adult, they may say, let's watch it for a while, let's keep an eye on it. Well, in young people, melanoma is more aggressive, more invasive, meaning it changes faster and it goes into the body faster. And you're busy. What if you're going off away to college for 6 months?
Right.
You're not going to have access to do that. So the wise move is, if anything looks weird, atypical, remove it, because you're removing the risk.
Right.
And some people will come back and say, well, it wasn't melanoma, so I kind of took it off for nothing. No, you stopped it. You have to get into the same mindset for people of a certain age that do a colonoscopy. If a doctor in a colonoscopy finds a polyp, it's considered, whew, we dodged that bullet. That's a win. It's the same mindset. That polyp is not colon cancer. But that polyp contains the possibility, the risk of developing further.
100%.
Right. And so we do mammograms with no issue, as we should.
Yeah.
Do colonoscopies when people are older. You know, and both of those are, one, they put you under, and the other, you're in a big machine. In a skin screening, it's a dermatologist with a scope in their hand. And it takes like 10 minutes. And okay, so you put on a paper gown and you sit there and you talk to them and they look at your moles. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. It's so common sense. So that's what we try to educate and encourage and give opportunity, because we just don't want other families to go through what we did. There's no reason that my Claire should not be here, be 26, working in interior design, which was her plan in life. There's just no reason.
And I think the work that you guys are doing as well, I mean, you just went through all of the research that has been done that has basically been triggered by Claire's case. So it's not even, you know, the awareness aspect, but it's more so awareness tied with actual research that has been triggered by this. I know, I mean, I had my first 2 precancerous biopsies when I was 20 years old. It was a week before my 21st birthday. And the only thing I knew about melanoma was that my mom had had it a couple months before. And that's all I knew. I knew that it affected older people. And when I went in for the skin screening, it was just for peace of mind for my mom. And when they said, hey, this is an atypical mole, I got the call back probably a week and a half later, which I didn't know at that time was not normal, because they were doing additional tests on it. So this entire time I was thinking, oh, it's not that big of a deal. The dermatologist called me. I knew it was atypical. And then that was the end of the conversation. And I went back to college and I didn't have any resources. I didn't know what it meant to have an atypical mole because no one explained it to me. And then I started doing research on my own. I'm like, oh, it was only atypical. It's not that big of a deal. And I didn't have the mindset that like, no, this is actually a victory. You caught it when it was atypical before it became melanoma. And I was 20 years old. So imagine if we didn't take it off. I'm now almost 26. It could have taken any number of ways, especially with my mom's cases. But I think that just goes to show how much information still needs to be properly distributed.
No, and thank you. Well, and for instance, you're still in that age to watch, and for the same reason it happened with Claire when she went through her puberty. Her doctor told us, her oncologist at Hopkins said, you know, she should never get pregnant. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, oh, it can develop during pregnancy. And we were, I went through having 2 kids. Nobody ever flagged and said, oh, guess what? If you're pregnant, maybe you should keep an eye on your moles or at least get checked. And we have her story on our website, Jamie Martell, a young mom. Now she has 2 kids, but she had to deliver her first son early to dive into her melanoma treatment. And honestly, it was push come to shove.
Wow.
And then she was told not to have any other kids. And then she had a little Maisie, went through it again.
Oh my gosh.
And she's NED now. Because where we live, she could go to NIH and she could try, all their cutting edge technology. What if you're in the middle of Kansas?
Right.
You don't have access. You're in rural America, or you're in other parts of the country that just do not have the hub that we have along the East Coast here, research hospitals and medical facilities. And, just as you were saying, they don't give you the information going forward. And and we, partly because like what we educate in part of our screenings is, and you know this from your experience, is, do self-check once a month, do all of that. Well, I'm a little torn with that because the self-check is putting the weight on the patient to take responsibility. And yet you can't detect melanoma with the naked eye. You have to have a trained dermatologist with dermoscopy. Like I had a mother reach out to me from Denver this January. It was the 2nd angelversary of her daughter passing. And, Colorado's very high altitude and very high risk. And, pediatrician. So many parents call me. I went to the pediatrician and they said they didn't think it was anything. Because they don't know what they don't know. And so what I have to train people is, no, you have to go to a dermatologist. Don't count on your primary care physician. And back to the point of looking at your own moles, we've had 2 young people that are going through our screenings were made aware and found moles that just popped up out of the blue or had changed within 6 months of a screening. And that made them go back to the dermatologist. And both times it was early stage melanoma, stage 1 for both of them. Wow. So through our education, that's what, and this conversation in itself, that's the point, is just don't think you put on sunscreen. And we feel, you're smart, you're 20, but I mean, you feel so, that nothing can touch you at this age.
Right. Invincible.
Invincible. And, oh, come on. I mean, what's the big deal? Right. And particularly tanning, because it's addictive. It has, they have done studies that, first off, you get the response in color because the going into a tanning booth, it affects the skin to the deepest level of the epidermis. Why the color comes up so fast. Well, that's why it's so damaging. But also it makes you feel good. It releases these endorphins that you feel good, right? I mean, the one reason we all enjoy going to the beach, it feels physically good to be in the sun, and you can be in the sun, be safely, but that's not the same thing as going to a tanning booth. And so many young people have been like, just one more. I mean, I know it's bad, but come on, how bad can it just, well, it's really bad.
It's really bad.
Really bad. You might as well throw yourself in front of a Mack truck on the freeway.
I know.
It's as damaging. I mean, I mean harsh, but it is. It's like, was that a sober decision you made to go to a tanning booth? I mean, really?
Yeah, I know.
So, that just makes me crazy, obviously.
I think the thing that sucks the most is when we see influencers and people with a platform going out and tanning, and they make like vlogs, or they show like, it's kind of like a day in my life, and it's just, there's just a section of their page dedicated to tanning. And I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I get that you're just trying to keep your audience engaged, but I hope you understand what message you're spreading here, because it's not something it's not a responsible message to be spreading.
No, it isn't at all. It isn't. And I can remember, I'm of the age, in the 70s when it first became in vogue, it was a sign, the Tropicana tan, and the whole thing. It was the rich, the jet set. Coco Chanel started the trend, the whole thing of if you're rich and wealthy, you'll be tanned.
Yeah.
And that's where it started. Well, 40 years ago, the UV was not as damaging as it is now. I mean, it's never a good idea. And I'm telling you, for somebody, I'm 63 now, And I say that proudly because my skin does not show it, because I was not a tanner, because like my daughter, I mean, unlike her, I would break out in hives if I got too much sun. So it was just not something that was going to happen for me. So I had to be very, very cautious of that kind of Irish colored skin. But I'm telling you, you'll be happy for it when you're my age, because you realize later if the risk of disease and cancer and melanoma doesn't do it for you, and your vanity is taking over, just understand there's not enough. You don't have the money to deal with all the age spots and the wrinkles and everything else in the rest of your life. Just invest in your skin and take care of it on all counts early on.
That's what we always tell people, and people in our community. We're like, use whatever motivation you need. Let it be wrinkles, let it be age spots, let it be melanoma, whatever reasoning you need to wear sunscreen, you go for it. You use that motivation.
Absolutely. And it's, don't you, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, with UPF 50 clothing, your products, it's, and I love the fashion forward that you guys use. One of the battles I had with Claire in 2011, when she was first diagnosed, was her dermatologist was like, give us all these catalogs. And it looked like you were going on safari.
Yeah. Yep.
It was the horrible hats and the big tacky this. And she's like, are you possessed? I am not wearing that, right?
Yep.
And so she had a lot of interest in fashion. She was going back and forth between fashions or interiors when she was trying to decide what she was. And one of our sitters at the time said, Claire, you should, like, who shared this passion with her, said, you really should go into designing UPF 50 clothing, right?
Yeah.
That's fashion forward, that somebody your age would wear, that is light and airy. And you know, so I really, obviously, we love what you guys do. But I think that's all part of it, is just incorporating sun safety into your life every day. And then it's not a big deal. You don't think about it so much.
Yeah. It's part of your everyday wardrobe. And exactly what you just said is what went through my head. Is I started Googling and looking up these UPF clothing brands, and I was so irritated because they seemed to be following the money, which is basically older individuals who have already had their first case of skin cancer and little teeny tiny adorable baby clothes. Yeah. And here I was about to turn 21. I wanted to look cute. I wanted to look sexy. And I didn't want to wear my grandma's curtain as a dress.
No, I know. And it's not, I mean, you think about it, just marketing, you guys spend more money than people that age anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So why not just focus on the demographic that where it is influencers and fashion forward. And, you know, I know you guys feel the same way. It's like the message. So our color is coral because that was Claire's favorite color. She felt that a part of her passion was that everybody should feel good about something in their day. And just backing up, and I'm going to talk about her for a minute, so you really understand, it kind of sets the vibe for our foundation, was that she kept it very private to herself. And when it had finally, it was exam time of her junior year, we thought she was just getting headaches from pressure of exams. It turned out it'd become leptomeningeal disease, where it had all but gone. And then melanoma has a way of coming back. And it had slipped into the cells of the fluid around her brain. Okay. And so she had to go through then the radiation and losing the hair and just all. And she had this crowning glorious blonde hair and these big blue eyes. And so then, other than her very closest friends, everybody, you know, was evident of what was going on with her. But and people were shocked because she was the kid that they felt bad about, because they'd come in, you know, her girlfriends would be like, oh, my boyfriend, you know, we had this horrible fight last night, and she'd listen and she'd make them laugh and, you know, and say, we have to go get ice cream. Ice cream solves everything. It always involves sugar somehow, or, you know, whatever. And then they were like going, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here lamenting this normal teenage thing. And I had no idea that earlier in the day she had to go do an MRI. Or she had to, I mean, but she didn't care. She just looked at it as everybody's got something. I'm going to get past it. I don't want to make a deal about it. I just want to have a happy day.
Wow.
And happiness for her was design. And so that's where she was going back and forth between what she wanted. And she finally reasoned that she wanted to live in Charleston. She wanted to create her own design business. And she had this whole format and vision of her future. And her reasoning was that everybody needs to have a happy environment around them, be it corporate, be it home, be it hotels, be it anything. And then she could make enough to spend it on Marc Jacobs or whoever else she loved. The best of both worlds. But her whole thing was everybody, if you have color around you, if you have joy around you, no matter what you're going through, you're going to be happier. And that's going to make you. It's a very simple philosophy. And I think that's how she got herself through what she was going through without really naming it. But that's how her friends knew her. So when it happened at her passing, she would have just been mortified if everybody showed up in black, because as she said, everybody doesn't need to wear black. And so we asked that you wear coral in some way, to celebrate her. And it just kind of took on. And she would get in, as artists, you can understand, it would be blue. I'd say, is this a beautiful blue? And she goes, oh, Mom, that's azure. And I'm like, it's blue? Okay, And we'd have these discussions of if it was peach, if it was pink, if it was coral. She had this very defined sense of what it truly was coral. And so that's why we're very, very picky about our color association. But what's been great in moving this forward, because our focus is young people to engage them, it makes you feel happy.
Yeah.
Coral is just a happy color.
Yep.
And our experience that if young people come into our world and learn or go to our screenings or they work with our college ambassadors and they walk away with an upbeat, positive feeling that's empowering, that's easy to engage with. If we went through our life showing the ugly side of melanoma, of treatment and scar, it's like, who wants to deal with that?
No.
And for young people, they correlate like, oh, if I get screened, then I'm going to end up going down that road. That's not the case at all. So that's why we really try to be so positive and upbeat. And you've worked with our college ambassadors.
I was about to say, I have to give your Virginia Tech college ambassadors the biggest shout out. Oh my goodness. They're incredible, because Snigdha and I, we were down at Virginia Tech for our first ever pop-up, and we were nervous about it resonating. People were coming in and out of this coffee shop, and we saw a college senior come up to us, and she's like, this is amazing. I have a story for you, and just had so much passion and light and positivity. And she came up to us, which, I don't think Snigdha and I don't think we're scary to approach, but I feel like it's also hard. Like, if you're a senior, you're going about your day, you're worried about other things. And she came up and just did such a beautiful job.
Oh, well, our college ambassadors are amazing. From the beginning, we were propelled into starting this organization. We knew we wanted to do something. She passed in October of 2014. And of course, we're just stunned and we knew we were going to do something at some point, but we were, as a family, still deep in our grief. And her high school friends from the Baltimore area, multiple high schools, got together and they were doing an event to fundraise called Moves for Claire, a dance-a-thon that spring. And one of our neighbors called and said, do you have a logo? And I'm like, I'll get one. Yes, we're going forward. And we realized they were starting the momentum for us. And so it's really been the best ideas. Her friends would have all been 26 now, or 25-ish in that age group, still turning 20. Her birthday is coming up on April 10th. But we've really just taken their lead. And they've engaged on such a huge level. So if anyone's interested, what our College Ambassador program is we are sprinkled on campuses around the country. If you're interested, go on our website, info@clairemariefoundation.org, and it'll come to me, I promise you. But what we do is we trusted, like Virginia Tech, like highly motivated young people who understand the story and how important it is to share it. And we say, your campus, the best way to reach people. Go find an event, find a way to connect, hand out our information, raise awareness, let people understand what's going on. and send us pictures so we can post them. It's just that easy. But it's the things they come up with. They do Relay for Life, and they'll get a table going, or they do commentary. They set up a table, and or they'll speak to their sports teams, or Greek houses that they're parts of, or pre-med programs, which we get a lot of dermatologists involved. And so we're from California we just got a new one at University of Oklahoma, on over to San Diego, all of course on the East Coast. Gosh, I'm going to forget some. I mean, we have them everywhere throughout the Midwest. Well, like about 32 campuses nationwide. So
it's so impressive. And I think that peer-to-peer education is so important, because you're talking to a peer. They're not trying to preach at you. They're just trying to help, and talking to someone who's your same age, who's using your same lingo and cool terminology. That is how you make sun safety look cool.
Well, don't you think, I mean, for instance, I'm a mom. I'm still a mom. I come across as a mom, no matter how I do it, right? But if you, I mean, for instance, for Maggie with Virginia Tech to come up to you and go, hey, guess what? Now, even if you didn't know anything about melanoma, which obviously you do in young people, and it's like, look, this is the number one cancer in our age group. You're going to go, what? Are you kidding me? That's crazy, right? And now you've got their attention, and it validates it completely.
Yeah, I think it definitely does. And I think another thing that really drew us to the Claire Marie Foundation is when I started LUV, I was the only young sun protective apparel brand. So I was the only brand that was founded by someone in their early 20s. Yeah. There was nothing else out there. And I feel like all day long, companies can try and guess what young people want to wear. But I was creating the business selfishly. I was creating it for myself to be able to wear. And I think that's kind of what really drew us to the Claire Marie Foundation, is like, you guys are also in that same target demographic, trying to make change in that age group.
Yeah. And we try to direct people, to someone as yourself. That's what we do. So we have brands that we recommend that we know are a little more trendy and on trend, as far as like sunscreens that work. And we give them the tools where to go. You want to look at really cute stuff, look at LUV. This is where to go. And it's a great opportunity. And you guys gave us this wonderful little discount cards, which we love, and handing this out right and left, So we want to get people covered, because it's not so much just, supporting each other, which is a wonderful opportunity. Cause marketing is so important, because you have the same mission as we do. And your mission is to help prevent melanoma in the same way ours is. We just have different paths to it. But the point being is that we don't recommend anything that is not approved by our team, our medical dermatology team, which are Hopkins, Columbia trained, University of Maryland, they're the top best of the best of the best. And we don't go out there and say anything that they are not saying is spot on. And that's why we're very protective about what brands we connect with. Because, honestly, because we have that younger demographic, we have companies that want to come to us so we can hand out their samples. And I'm like,
not a good fit.
No, because you don't have anything to do with what we're trying to do. So we're just so appreciative of the quality of what you've come up with, and the fact that it's, a young dynamic style, and it's cutting edge. It's really beautiful stuff. We always have such a great response when we show it off. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And thank you guys for, just continuing to spread education and awareness, and actually vetting these companies so that people know what they're getting. Because I feel like, as UPF becomes more and more popular, more things are popping up on Amazon, and people don't physically know whether they do what they're saying they're doing.
Okay. For instance, with all the discussion about gel gloves, right? About gel, manicures and all that, right? So talking to our derms, I'm like, okay, obviously it's a new topic, refresh topic, but we have to bring it up. So I'm on Amazon, and just people need to be aware, and really, it's all in the details, right? Yeah. And looking at products. So a lot of the gloves that popped up on Amazon are not UPF 50. No. They're just gloves.
Yeah.
And that's where, because you have to look at the word glove will pop up and there it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, really the one thing that, we're so proud on so many levels, but if I can share any information is with people is to really pay attention to the fine details. When you're talking with your doctor on any health issue, as a young person, you probably found this out yourself going through it, is, you're over 18, you're the adult, you're the patient. And your parents, I always say have a second set of ears there. And there's nothing like a mom or a dad, but always have another second set of ears. Because if you're talking on a big issue like a cancer diagnosis, you're emotionally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And you need to have somebody else listening to what's being said because you will miss stuff. Be calm and collected as you can. Because if you're emotional, doctors don't want to talk to you. They want to get away from you. And you want to be that very methodical person as much as you can. Have a notebook, take notes, ask questions, be very, very diligent with it. And you will find you'll get a better connection and better information. But advocate for yourself. And as you found out the hard way when they're like, oh, it's atypical. And that's where we try to fill this void. It's like, well, what does that mean? They should have told you. You need to be back in 3 months.
Yep.
For 3 months, for a year. And then after that, we'll see maybe every 6 months, but we'll keep an eye on things.
Yeah. I went straight to a year.
Yeah. I have, it just makes me crazy because I hear this all the time that I've had a friend who, they had melanoma stage 1 taken off. And they were told, and she asked, can you check all the other moles on me? And her dermatologist, this was in California, said, we don't really need to check every mole. There's no reason.
Oh, man.
That's it. I'm sure you're fine. It's like, no, you should be checking every single mole. And I should be coming back if I have stage 1, following up. And having every 3 months. But because of us, she called me to say, this is what this dermatologist said. What do you think? And I said, you know what? You need to find a new dermatologist.
Yeah.
Because in the world of dermatology, they keep in mind, every person has skin. That's the biggest organ on every human's body.
Yep.
And that puts us all at risk for melanoma and skin cancers, but also anything that comes through your body, any health issue can be reflected through your skin. Yep. So they have a number of medical issues that they're trying to see and check and manage. And then you add to it the cosmetic side, which is where they can make more money. And so it's a business component that must be balanced. But the problem is and you don't know, depending on the dermatologist, some are more cosmetically focused, some are more medically focused. So when you're making an appointment, don't just call and ask for a dermatologist to get a screening. Say, do you do dermoscopy? And if they don't, then go find somebody else who does, because that means they're just trying to move you through real quick with the naked eye. Right. And that's, we just try to, just understand the system you're dealing with. In Australia, a general practitioner, a pediatrician, if you're a young person, does the skin screenings with dermoscopy. They just take that off the table of dermatologists because there's so many other issues. That's why the wait is so long to get in. Right. So if you become a regular patient just to get a baseline, you may wait 4 or 5 months for that appointment. But now you have a dermatologist. So if you have a health issue come up with your skin, then you can get in quicker because you're already in their system.
Yeah, I think the cosmetic aspect is, my mom and I have both told this to dermatologists before. They say, oh, this looks a little suspicious. We don't have to take it off. I'm like, take it off. I do not care. My husband does not care. Take it off. I don't care if I have a scar. I just don't want melanoma. That is a very clear trade-off. And
have you found other atypical moles since then as you've progressed in your life?
Yep. I've had multiple atypical. Since my first ever one when I was 20, I've had almost one a year.
Yeah. So see, you're smart. Your body is trying to create the skin cancer in some form for you. So, but atypical means you nipped it in the bud. That's the great thing about it.
I said I will celebrate an atypical every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What's that little nick on the skin? Who cares? That's what lasers are for, right?
Honestly, there are so many treatments now that those scars can be completely gone. I'm like, I do not care. Like I have the silicone scar patches. I have the Moderna sunscreen, scar cream, whatever. I do not care. But I think a lot of dermatologists do think about that aesthetic aspect, and some people do care more than I do. And you have to know the risks for a scar. Is a scar worth allowing melanoma to progress? No, I don't think it ever is going to be.
No, it's not. And I mean, it's hard to explain to someone that hasn't been through it. Like they always say, it's just statistics are only numbers until they affect you.
Right.
And if it's, 2%, well, if you're part of that 2%, it's 100%.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and that's what I keep going back to, someone in your age group will not get the easier cancers of skin. You will get a melanoma and it can kill you. And the thing to keep in mind is once it has spread, and it's like Claire's was a 3A, barely an A. Well, there's only 4 stages. And even though 3s can be treatable, melanoma is known to go dormant in the system. And then as we found, we thought it was all but gone. She was supposed to be going to Spain with her friends for a high school trip. We were checking out colleges. Everything was fine. When and things have progressed so much more treatments now, when she was diagnosed, a lot of the more common treatments now were still trials. And because she was under 18, she couldn't get on them. Because of Claire, a lot of these rules have been changed to include young people, which I'm so thankful for.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason. And that's part of our argument is anybody under 21 technically is considered a pediatric patient.
Right.
And that's why we are adolescent and young adult melanoma. We are not pediatric, because a 2-year-old's body is extremely different than a 16-year-old. And children can be born with melanoma. It can happen. It's rare. But it's not as common as in an adolescent case or a young adult case. And the point being is now medical science is finally starting to look at what they call AYA health, adolescent young adult health, as a separate entity. Because you're kind of in this no man's land where you're closer to being an adult, but your body's still in the process. And so the medicine needs to address that specifically. And it's finally starting to get there. But that's why we are just adamant that it's not pediatric melanoma. It's adolescent young adult, which, the numbers statistically take it up to 30, but it's even a higher prevalence up to 40 for all the reasons we've addressed. But the more you guys talk about it with each other and put this out there, the more benefit will come from it. That my hope is that I have a little grandson, Graham, who's just adorable. We call him Gray. Not that I'm prejudiced or anything. But, he'll be 3 this summer. And my hope is by the time he's your age, it's like everybody's getting a screening routinely, like they're going to the eye doctor, the ear doctor, the physician once a year, go get your skin screened. No big deal.
Yep.
Skincare is no big deal. That it's not something we have to tell people all about because they just do it without thinking.
Yeah.
You guys are helping to forward this conversation because it's all about practice and making it part of our life.
And I want to talk about screening days because when this episode goes live, the next screening day is going to be March 11th in Maryland. And I want anyone listening who's local to the DMV area to know about this event. So would you mind sharing more?
Yeah. So it's Belcara Health in Baltimore. And I apologize. I don't have their number off the top of my head. I should have that ready.
We'll add it in the show notes.
But the information is, it's on our website, clairemurrayfoundation.org. It's on our Instagram, the Claire Murray Foundation, also on our Facebook page. And it's just first come, first serve. And what it is you come in and will get screened head to toe with a dermoscopy-based screening. You'll get awareness education. You get a takeaway bag with sunscreen in it and just some Claire Marie goodies and stuff. We have sun hats, great big sun hats to give away. So it's just a real quick in the door out. We are trying to schedule more screenings for fall that hopefully we'll know, by June what's going on. May is Melanoma Awareness Month, and we have traditionally done it in May in the past. But for young people, that's the absolute worst time on the planet because there's graduations and there's proms and there's playoffs and there's like got to remember Mother's Day. Don't forget that one. So there's all those going on. And if you live in Maryland, there's also a horse race or two that we like to always go to on Preakness. So it's kind of tough to schedule. So we've decided this year we did them in February and March, which is great because it's kind of that quiet period and it's pre-spring break. So you have a good skin check. You're healthy before you take off for the sun and the rest of the summer. And so we want to try to offer it as everybody at the end of the summer, heading back into real life. Work and play and school, as it would be.
Yep. And we'll include a link to all of this in the show notes so that people can easily click and
thank you. That'd be great.
Go reserve their spot and
sign up early because it will fill up. There's only a limited number. Our dermatologists, how it works is it's such a gift from them that they're so committed to our program that they take a Saturday, they bring in their staff, they donate their time. And just revealing just a little, I just did this post the other day, just the economics of this. If, God forbid, you get melanoma and you have to go like we did down the treatment path, pharmacological costs in the first year are like $382,000.
Insane.
That's not surgery. That's not time off work. That's not any of that. And that's if you have to go into treatment. Now, taking it back, if you have a private dermatologist, sometimes insurance pays, sometimes it doesn't. Right. If it doesn't, it's about $175 to $200 for the screening. If you need a biopsy, that can jump up to about $400. Now, if you come to us, if you see anything, we're not doing a biopsy. That's not happening. They're just screening you and recommending. But it's completely free. It's maybe 15 minutes on a Saturday.
Yep. It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. Like, call it a day, right? Because we have all these fabulous dermatologists who donate their efforts, their time, the cost of this to do it. And so take advantage of it. Because, again, it could take you 4 to 5 months just to even get an appointment.
Right.
This way you're also in their registry.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've met a dermatologist. Now you're part of their world. So
it's such an incredible event. I hope people listening show up, and I hope they mention this episode too. They're like, "Hey, I'm educating myself. I learned about this from the podcast." I'd be so happy.
I love it. Well, I'm going to be sharing it, so we'll hopefully get pushback on all of it because, like we said, spread the word. Spread the word.
Yes, as far and wide as possible. Well, Marianne, thank you so much for your time. And for anyone listening, where can they find you and the Claire Marie Foundation if they want to connect besides the website? We'll obviously share the website as well.
Right. Well, just look us up on Instagram. Very easy. Claire Marie Foundation, Facebook. We are on Twitter. It's just me doing it. So I'm not that quick to do it all. But most everyone, Instagram is just such a prevalent force. So we just mostly live there. That's the best way to find all of our information, just to make it simple. And then we post any updates on our website as well. And we have also just on our website, so we do have research for all I've talked about. Any new updates and information, I write blog posts about and update there. So anything new we find about specifics to this age group, specifics on fresh new ways to stay preventive, any information, for instance, always wear sunglasses because you can get ocular melanoma, things that people don't think about. Just little reminders. We have videos on our Vimeo site, which is attached on our blog, educational videos. There's a lot of concert videos you can enjoy as well. We did during COVID a virtual music concert which was so much fun. Claire had a couple musician friends. My brother-in-law's a musician in California. So we like had from coast to coast, from Nashville on up to Baltimore. It was so much fun. And then we did educational videos in there. So if you go to our Vimeo site, don't be surprised that you'll find like, wait, what? And one of our wonderful musicians is on The Voice.
No way.
Episode.
That's insane.
Alyssa Lazar, yes.
Gosh.
So she is going to cheer her on. I'm hoping that, well, I'm not going to be prejudiced about who she gets. I just think she'll get a chair turn no matter what. But we're going to be cheering her on. So,
oh my gosh.
And yeah, we've had a lot of support. We had, if you go through our videos, we had the cast of The Big Bang Theory did a public service announcement for us when things first happened. Molly Sims, who's a wonderful, obviously influencer, model, supermodel at one point, actress, mom, everything. She's done some stuff for us. We've just had all sorts of wonderful, wonderful support. I always think it's Claire doing her magic. We always laugh because the minute I think, okay, it's getting quiet, we've kind of served our purpose, then we get some other surprise, like you guys reaching out. And I'm like, okay, Claire's not done with the first show yet. She's activating things again. So,
gosh, well, we're so thankful to be a part of it, and I'm sure for people listening, they're automatically intrigued. They're already hitting that follow button to stay up to date with you guys. But Marianne, thank you so much for your time again.
Thank
you so much for joining us.
Best of luck.